Geopolitics is a bit of a mess, isn't it? But man, the ripple effects from Operation Epic Fury are wilder than anyone expected. Today, we're cutting right through the partisan spin to look at the raw data, the exact quotes, and the massive strategic shifts happening right now from the Persian Gulf all the way to your local gas pump. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to look at four main things today: the actual status of the operation on the ground, the ticking 60-day legal clock, how this is hitting you right at the gas pump, and finally, the global troop ripple effects. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the status of Operation Epic Fury, basically paper versus reality. So, right off the bat, we've got to ask, is this war actually over? You know, when thousands of munitions have been dropped, you'd think there'd be a simple yes or no. But right now, we're seeing a pretty wild disconnect between official declarations and what's physically happening. The administration recently sent a letter to Congress stating that the April ceasefire is totally holding. The exact word they used? They said the hostilities that kicked off back on February 28th have, quote, terminated. So, on paper anyway, it's done. And this brilliantly illustrates the tension here. On paper, it's terminated. But on the ground, the Pentagon has definitely not pulled its assets out of the Persian Gulf. I mean, think about it. You don't just leave a massive naval and air apparatus sitting there if the dust has completely settled, right? Actually, Admiral Brad Cooper just presented some new strike options, and the contrast is kind of mind-blowing. Option A is literally to blast the hell out of them and finish them forever. Option B, try to make a deal. Now, President Trump has stated he currently prefers option B, saying he wants to avoid more strikes on a human basis. All right, moving on to Section 2, the 60-day legal clock and avoiding that deadline. To really grasp why that terminated letter was sent exactly when it was, we got to look at Washington. Just as a quick refresher, the War Powers Act is a law that requires the president to literally ask Congress for permission if military action drags on for more than 60 days in a row. Let's track the timeline. Hostilities kicked off in late February. Then a ceasefire started in early April. If that clock had just kept ticking, late April would have triggered that exact 60-day hurdle. And that's exactly why a lot of lawmakers are looking at that terminated declaration as a brilliant strategic maneuver. It essentially resets the clock and bypasses Congress entirely. Now, the administration is pretty blunt about this. President Trump has called the War Powers Act totally unconstitutional. And to be fair, he points out that basically every modern president has felt the exact same way about it. Behind the scenes, though, there are some fascinating dynamics regarding our actual military readiness. According to reporting from The Atlantic, Vice President Vance has actually expressed some concerns to the president about whether we have enough of certain missile systems left after using so many. But President Trump, he completely dismisses that. He claims the U.S. has inventory all over the globe and is, in his words, locked and loaded. Let's move to Section 3, impact at the gas pump, and how this builds into hitting your wallet. Look, while all this constitutional maneuvering and missile counting happens behind closed doors, the price at the pump is what actually hits you today. Thanks to this conflict, the national average for gas has skyrocketed to $4.39 a gallon. It's literally the most immediate, painful reminder of Operation Epic Fury every single time you fill up your tank. But there is a silver lining here if this peace process holds. Projections show that the absolute second the strait opens back up for normal shipping, that brutal $4.39 could plummet down to $3.50. It's crazy, but our domestic relief is basically entirely hostage to a resolution in the Middle East. Okay, finally, let's look at Section 4, global troop ripple effects and the European withdrawal. Now, what's really interesting about this is how a conflict in the Middle East is totally reshaping Europe. We just found out the U.S. is pulling 5,000 troops completely out of Germany. That's roughly a 13% drop out of the 38,000 troops we have stationed there. That is a massive strategic shift. The official line from the Department of War is that this is step 1, a complete review of our force posture in Europe. But step 2, actually moving 5,000 soldiers, all their heavy equipment, and their families, that's a huge logistical puzzle. So they're planning to execute this withdrawal over a 6 to 12-month timeline. But the real story is the diplomatic friction underneath all this. This withdrawal comes right on the heels of President Trump harshly criticizing Germany for not stepping up and helping during the Iran conflict. And it might not stop with Germany either. Spain and Italy could absolutely be next to see U.S. troops pack up and leave. So the crucial point is this. Everything we've talked about, the dropping gas prices, the 60-day legal clock, reshuffling troops in Europe, it's all balancing on a knife's edge. the administration probably isn't going to officially close the book on Epic Fury until Iran says the magic words, no nuclear weapons. So what does this all mean for the global economy if they just absolutely refuse to say them? That's the big question we'll be watching. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.